We've experienced isolation, loss, and uncertainty. But in the midst of this crisis, we've also seen huge acts of kindness. The moment the world never thought would come has arrived. After months of public speculation, Princess Catherine has finally broken her silence about Princess Charlotte. And what she said wasn't just heartbreaking, it confirmed fears of the palace and shocked them into tears. The room where Princess Catherine broke her silence was not a grand hall meant for spectacle. It was small by royal standards, tightly secured and deliberately private. Thick doors closed the space to the outside world. Only a handful of people were allowed inside, including senior aides, trusted courtiers, and a few members of the family. There were no press cameras, no live broadcast, and yet everyone present understood that what was about to happen would not stay contained for long. Catherine stood calmly at first. Her posture was straight, her hand steady as she unfolded a single sheet of paper. But those closest to her noticed the small signs, the tightness around her eyes, the pause before she spoke. When her voice finally filled the room, it was clear this was not a palace statement drafted by committee. She did not rush. Instead, she spoke slowly, choosing words that sounded simple but landed heavily. She confirmed what the public had feared for months. Princess Charlotte had been facing a serious health challenge for some time. She did not name it outright, nor did she dramatize it, but she described ongoing treatment, long absences from public view, and a reality that had reshaped their family behind closed doors. The word tragic was never used, but everyone felt it. She spoke not only as the Princess of Wales, but as a mother, and what she revealed about Princess Charlotte's health left everyone reeling. The word condition was used carefully, neither defined nor denied, but it carried a weight of pain that silenced even the most seasoned royal correspondents. Her tone was firm yet fragile, and as she described hidden pain, unseen challenges, and a tragic reality, it became abundantly clear that this was no prepared palace press release. This was truth, raw and unfiltered, and it was a truth that would shake the very foundations of the monarchy. Her voice wavered, just slightly. Catherine paused, gathered herself, and continued. She spoke about the fear she had been hiding, about nights spent listening to hospital monitors, about the ache of smiling in public while breaking in private. That was the moment several people in the room began to cry quietly at first. Then the tears became harder to hide. It was obvious that this was no longer protocol. This was grief stepping into the light, and that was only the beginning. For months leading up to this moment, the palace had worked hard to keep one question unanswered. Where is Princess Charlotte? Unlike her brothers, her absence had been explained away with vague phrases. The royal tabloids have claimed she was away for private schooling or family time. It had even been rumored that she needed a quieter schedule. But the truth revealed by Princess Catherine was far more complicated and far more painful than anyone could ever have imagined. Within minutes, the palace's communication lines exploded. National outlets interrupted scheduled programming. International networks scrambled to confirm what seemed impossible. The royal family's ironclad reputation for silence and control had just been pierced by one of their most beloved figures. Social media went into a frenzy. Hashtags with Charlotte's name trended globally. Messages of love poured in by the second. But while the public outcry was ongoing, the mood inside the royal circle was one of devastation. Princess Anne, often the family's most stoic figure, was said to be visibly shaken, her composure finally cracking under the strain of the news. Prince William, who had stood beside his wife for so long in public composure, disappeared from view immediately after the briefing. He retreated into the private quarters of Kensington Palace. A ghost in his own home. Palisades described an eerie quiet spreading through the halls, a silence so profound it was louder than any argument. "We always knew she'd do what was right," one insider whispered to a journalist hours later, their voice trembling with a mixture of awe and fear, "but none of us were ready for what it would cost." Still, the most jarring part of Catherine's message wasn't the tone of her words or the sorrow in her voice. It was the intention behind them. Her final sentence rang through the room like a bell tolling over tradition. "It's time." The truth was known. A phrase so simple yet so honest, signaling a rarely seen breach in royal protocol that would forever alter the course of the monarchy. She hadn't sought permission from anyone before making the truth known. She hadn't cleared it with the palace press office. She had simply chosen to speak. And in doing so, she placed herself not only at the center of a global storm, but at odds with the very institution she once vowed to uphold. But the true bombshell, the detail that left the hardened quarters in shock, was the diagnosis itself. Catherine revealed that Princess Charlotte had been diagnosed with a rare degenerative neurological disorder, one that had been diagnosed months earlier in a top-tier facility in Switzerland. The name of the condition was one that sent shivers down the spines of those who heard it. A medical term so complex and frightening that it sounded like something from a medical drama, not the life of a beloved princess. She described the early signs, the subtle changes in Charlotte's demeanor that only a mother would notice. The way she would sometimes stare into space, the slight tremor in her hand that she tried to hide by clutching her favorite toy. The moments of confusion that were quickly brushed off as childhood daydreaming. But this was not the beginning of the story. To understand the depth of the situation, we must travel back to the first quiet signs, the whispers of a storm that was gathering long before the world dared to look. It wasn't a scream that warned the world. It was the deafening silence. As official portraits, public appearances, and royal events continued, one question kept growing louder in the minds of the public and the press. Where is Princess Charlotte? Her absence from key moments sent whispers through the press. But what started as tabloid chatter quickly spiraled into something far more sinister and deeply concerning. At first, it was subtle. A missed engagement here, a cropped photo there. During a particularly memorable royal Easter celebration, the public noticed a peculiar edit. Charlotte's name was mentioned in the official itinerary, but she was nowhere to be seen in the family photos released later. Speculation was brushed off by palace officials as online noise, but sharp-eyed royal watchers began to compile a list. From Christmas carols to balcony appearances, a pattern formed. Charlotte was missing, and the silence around her was growing louder, more pronounced, and more worrying with each passing event. Then came the photo that broke the camel's back. What should have been a joyful, unified portrait of the Wales family celebrating Prince George's birthday became a flashpoint of controversy. The image was warm, polished, presenting everything the monarchy wanted to project to the world, except for one glaring detail that could not be ignored. Princess Charlotte was absent, not forgotten, but seemingly deliberately removed from the family narrative. Rumors exploded across social media under the banner Portraitgate. Experts in digital forensics chimed in, questioning the shadows, spacing, and posture. Convinced the photo had been digitally altered to erase her presence or explain away her absence, and if so, why? What possible reason could the palace have for removing a beloved child from a family portrait? Within hours, the palace issued a vague statement attempting to quash the growing fire of public concern. Princess Charlotte is enjoying a quieter time at home. It read, a phrase so clinical and cold, it only added fuel to the flames of speculation. What kind of quiet keeps a child away from her own family's portrait? It wasn't just her public absence. It was the inconsistencies in the stories that was an attempt to explain it away. Calendar entries from leaked royal schedule showed that Charlotte was originally listed to attend multiple events before those entries were quietly deleted in revised versions sent to different departments. Aides close to the family began expressing concern in hushed conversations. Some said Catherine had become increasingly withdrawn and rarely smiled during private moments. Others whispered she had made multiple solo visits to a private medical facility under intense secrecy, arriving and leaving through back entrances to avoid detection. The timing of these secretive visits aligned almost perfectly with the dates of Charlotte's public absences, a connection too strong to be dismissed as mere coincidence, and it only got more alarming. By this point, even the tabloids had stopped treating the situation like idle gossip. Reputable sources began probing further. Their instincts as journalists telling them something was deeply wrong. Journalists with long-standing palace access were stonewalled at every turn as they tried to find out the truth behind the inconsistencies. Briefings were shortened and several royal communications were tightened overnight. Yet, even as the royal machinery moved to contain the growing unease, it was clear something was unraveling behind those gilded gates, something that no amount of protocol could contain. The final straw for many came when Catherine herself was photographed, leaving the back entrance of a high-security pediatric center alone. Her head was bowed, her face hidden behind large sunglasses, her car surrounded by unmarked security vehicles in a way that suggested more than just routine protection. The palace issued no comment, a silence that spoke volumes and only served to make the public more curious about what was going on behind the scenes. The silence from the monarch spoke louder than any denial ever could. And it was only a matter of time before the dam of secrecy broke. As questions mounted and silence thickened to an unbearable degree, It wasn't the press or public that cracked the code, but an accidental leak that shattered the illusion that everything was all right with Princess Catherine completely. It was never meant to be seen by an outside eye, but one misfiled document, one error in the tightly guarded palace communication chain exposed the truth they had fought so desperately to bury. Inside was a single name that revealed a devastating diagnosis and a direct link to the young princess that would change everything. The leak sent royal staff scrambling and forced damage control into overdrive. The file wasn't intercepted by the press in a dramatic sting operation. It didn't come from a whistleblower with an agenda against the monarchy. It was, as palace insiders would later admit, the result of a simple clerical mistake. An internal health communication tagged strictly confidential that ended up in the inbox of someone it should never have reached. That someone whose identity remains protected to this day forwarded it to an outside contact believing it was a harmless administrative memo about palace logistics. By the time its true contents were discovered, it had already made its way into the hands of some reporters who refused to stay silent. The document referenced ongoing pediatric observation and response protocol tied directly to Princess Charlotte and her condition. The language was technical and full of medical terms, but unmistakable in its implications. Words like progressive markers, longitudinal monitoring, and neurodevelopmental divergence filled the page, painting a picture of a serious ongoing medical situation that was being carefully tracked and managed like a state secret, not a child's health. The final paragraph mentioned non-disclosure continuation and controlled narrative strategy, terms not typically associated with a child's well-being but rather with crisis management. This wasn't just a health update. This was a plan, and it was never meant to be public knowledge. But the next thing that happened was even more surprising. When the leak hit the private circuits of London's press network, panic erupted inside the palace. Phones rang through the night. Legal threats were prepared before the first headline could ever be written. But the damage had been done. The few journalists who had seen the document didn't need to publish it. They only needed to hint at what it revealed. And the public did the rest, their imagination running wild with possibilities. Soon after, speculation exploded. What began as concern from the public morphed into outright fear for the young princess's well-being. The palace reacted instantly. All health-related communications were locked down tighter than ever before. Staff were warned, reprimanded, and reshuffled. A new set of digital security measures was rushed into place, and physical access to internal files was restricted even for long-time aides who had previously enjoyed unrestricted access. Then came the meeting, an emergency crisis summit ordered by King Charles himself. Every senior member of the royal household was expected to attend, but one chair remained empty, Princess Catherine's. Her absence was not questioned. It was feared. Was it a silent protest against the attempts of the monarchy to hide the truth? A refusal to cooperate with the palace's plan to contain the leak? Sources close to the family revealed that the meeting was a battlefield of ideologies. On one side, the older members of the parliament, led by the king's most trusted advisers, argued for a tightening of the narrative. They proposed a carefully worded statement acknowledging Charlotte's health challenges while emphasizing her resilience and the family's privacy. It was a strategy of damage limitation, a way to control the story without revealing the devastating truth. On the other side were those who believed the truth was inevitable and that transparency was the only path forward. But their voices were drowned out by the roar of tradition. The decision was made to double down on secrecy, a choice that would prove to be the monarchy's greatest miscalculation. After the decision of the Parliament to keep the situation under wraps, Princess Anne stepped in, and had seen this pattern before. Silence, delay, and damage control disguised as dignity. She had lived through it with Diana. And when she realized Catherine was being asked to endure the same thing, something in her snapped. According to insiders, and confronted senior advisers first. Then she went directly to the king. The meeting was tense. Voices were raised. And, usually unshakable, was visibly emotional. She argued that protecting the institution at the cost of a child was not protection at all. It was betrayal. Witnesses later said and left that room in tears. Not theatrical tears or public ones. These were the tears of someone who knew history was repeating itself and felt powerless to stop it. She went straight to Catherine afterward. What was said between them has never been confirmed. But when Catherine emerged from their meeting, her face was set with quiet determination. As the old guard plotted their strategy of containment, They fatally underestimated the one person who had the most to lose and the most powerful weapon to wield, a mother's love. While the palace activities went on, Catherine was waging her own war. In the privacy of Adelaide Cottage, she and William were living a nightmare. The diagnosis had not only stolen their daughter's future, but had also isolated them in a prison of their own making. Every public appearance was a performance. Every smile a mask. The weight of the secret was crushing them. But it was Catherine who felt it most acutely. Her everyday life now quietly shifted around Charlotte's needs. Medical appointments scheduled under false names. Specialists brought in discreetly, and entire wings of royal residences closed off to maintain privacy. Even Long Irving staff were kept in the dark. Only a few knew how serious things had become. She watched Charlotte's subtle decline with a heart that was breaking a little more each day. She saw the confusion in her daughter's eyes when a simple task became difficult. The frustration when her body wouldn't obey her mind. The palace's strategy of keeping the young princess's situation was a lie. And Catherine, being the mother she was, could no longer be a party to it. She had seen the whispers online, the concern in the eyes of the well-wishers who lined the streets.